So I realize I haven't actually talked about the new Dragon Ball Super movie coming up on this channel, like at all. And I guess that is kind of a bit strange considering it's one of the biggest things to really talk about in terms of Dragon Ball and it's coming up and there's a lot of kind of hype behind it. But I mean, if you follow me on social media, you might kind of know why I haven't made any videos about it, and that's kind of because I'm not really that excited for a lot of the stuff that seems to be in this movie. I kind of don't really have that much positive to say, so I thought it would just be easier to kind of just not say anything at all. Because I mean, the thing is, like, the longer that the promotion for this movie is going on, the more the movie seems to be hinting and kind of hyping up, like, the big things about this movie, the things that you're supposed to be interested in are, like, Broly, in the way that the fan base really likes Broly, the Dragon Ball Minus version of Bardock and Goku's origin story, and Gogeta. None of these things were things that I really ever wanted to see in the main story of the franchise ever again, and I could basically make videos in of themselves as to why each one of those things are things that I kind of wish weren't really in this movie. But honestly, that's not really my style. That's not really the kind of video I like making, so, I mean, I'm just not really gonna mention it. Like, I feel like if you know my opinions on the franchise, you probably would know why I think some things are good ideas and some things aren't good ideas. And a lot of the stuff that is like, people don't really like, they've been pretty vocal about what exactly is wrong with it or what exactly they don't like about it, so it's not really such a big deal. But I thought if I was going to make a video about Broly, it's going to be if I have something unique to say. And so I think I kind of have something to say. So I'm going to be talking about one potentially positive thing that could come out of this movie. That is the fact that this is a Broly movie. Broly is going to be in the movie, and it is basically a new version of Broly. And because they have a new version of Broly, they kind of have the opportunity to really sort of discuss and maybe even give Broly a lot of depth that he was really lacking in the original. Broly is just such an odd part of the franchise when I think about it, because he's one of those characters that actually kind of like Bardock, he sort of feels like he means something completely different depending on what piece of media he's in. As in, like, Broly, the generic, no nonsense movie villain, is kind of completely different to Broly, the unstoppable bonus boss in the video games, and that's also kind of different to Broly in his first actual appearance in the 8th movie. See, the reason for this discussion in the first place was that recently there was an interview with Shigeyasu Yamauchi for this random French website. Yamauchi was the director of the Buu saga of Dragon Ball Z, and also several of the movies, including the first two Broly films. And so this interview has kind of been floating around the fandom recently, but it's only kind of been amateurly translated into English and sort of bits and pieces, which is probably why it hasn't been getting much attention. But in the interview, Yamauchi actually does talk about Broly in ways that are actually kind of interesting. So, as this is basically like third hand information with lots of translations and whatnot, take a lot of this with a grain of salt, but from the stuff that I've seen, Yamauchi says something like this. He mentions that sort of Broly is sort of the most powerful warrior, but if he is the most powerful, then what reason does he have to lose? Broly only has that his power, while Goku and Vegeta have a family and friends and etc. etc. He said, I wanted to explore this loneliness and show that maybe physical power wasn't enough to beat the power of love, friendship, bonds, etc. etc. Broly almost makes me feel bad. He's one of the darkest characters in the Dragon Ball universe. Originally, I wanted him to say at the end, who am I exactly? But they cut that out. If I could, I would have wanted to sort of deepen his story and his personality. So when I read that kind of stuff, it made me think, actually, no, Yamauchi's comments sort of make sense. That actually does seem like what the character of Broly was sort of supposed to be. Like, if you just sort of look at his appearance, just look at his design. So he's basically this really ridiculously over-muscled guy with no eyes. If the eyes are the windows to the soul, you could basically say that Broly's design represents something that is just so powerful, definition of this character who is just so powerful that he has lost his soul in the process. There you go, I just analyzed Broly by looking at his appearance symbolically. That's what I do on this channel sometimes. But yeah, the idea that Broly is a character who is basically so strong, he has nothing else, and that's kind of almost a bad thing, that is something that would have actually made him a kind of interesting character if that's what anyone really wanted to do with him in his appearance. See, Broly as this character has been this one I've had this kind of disconnect towards, and I think I'm only now just starting to figure out why. The issue I've had with Broly is because, from his design and from the first slower part of movie 8, it makes you think that there is this theme to Broly, this theme that Broly is this guy, that's so strong, he doesn't have anything else, and he's that kind of tragic figure. But then, when you get to the second half of movie 8, it pretty much consists entirely of just Broly beating up several Super Saiyans and Piccolo at once, Vegeta monologuing that he's so strong, and then the fight just inexplicably deciding to end once Goku decides to take everyone's power. You know, it's like every other movie villain and every other Dragon Ball Z movie fight. Perhaps it's sort of unmatched in the pure scale and viciousness as to what Broly is like, but that fight is nothing really unique, and certainly nothing that provides any sense of this kind of tragic tale. At that point in the movie, Broly is just a crazy monster like every other movie villain, and he just needs to be stopped like every other movie villain because he's evil. Also, it doesn't make Broly's reason for hating Goku any less kind of dumb. It's almost like there was an attempt to do something with Broly, to kind of try and make the Broly movie mean something, but then they realized partway through that the kids wouldn't really care enough, or they thought that they would be more entertained if there was just cool fighting, and so they just kind of silently dropped that idea, dropped the plot line, and just made another beat 'em up. If that movie was the end of Broly, I think this whole thing would just be just a small, fun little tidbit, but nothing to really write home about. I mean, after all, it's one of the non canon movies. They kind of sort of blur into each other after a while. But we do know that that was not the end of Broly. After the Bojack film, Broly came back, fighting Goten, Trunks, and Gohan this time, but functionally almost identical to his appearance in the 8th movie. You know, if I had been born and was following the franchise in 1994 when movie 10 came out, I think I would have actually been kind of upset. Not because the film was too goofy, or they still had to shove in Goku, or the family Kamehameha was too much of an obvious retread of the Cell arc, but the fact that they erased any sort of depth that Broly might have had in movie 8. Paragus isn't there in movie 8. No one has any sort of meaningful connections to him on screen. We don't know what he was doing, we don't know where he came from. He just sort of breaks out of the ice, shows up in the middle of the story, and starts fighting everyone mindlessly. He basically doesn't even speak other than saying Kakarot, this kind of frenzied menace mistaking Goten for the guy that cried as a baby and defeated him last time. Anything that would have made Broly a character worth any kind of discussion was kind of gone. He was left as just some unbelievably strong, relentless opponent and nothing else. And then movie 11 clones him, and his clone literally degenerates into a pile of crap. Why does that feel like a metaphor? Oh god, was that a metaphor? Was that a metaphor the entire time? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Broly does have the potential to be an interesting character. But it was just that, potential. Potential that had been squandered arguably even in his first appearance, and definitely by his second and third. And also him remembering Goku as a baby is still dumb. But the fact that Dragon Ball Super does have Broly back interacting with other characters gives me hope. Paragus is back as the evil mastermind to make Broly look more sympathetic by comparison. There's the new Frieza henchmen who say that they have a relationship with Broly. He may even have a personality other than just being the ridiculously strong bonus boss. Certainly, we do know that they're giving an explanation as to where he comes from. See, it would make a lot of sense to use Broly as this metaphor for what you'd think a Super Saiyan was. You know, this being of pure power and ruthlessness. And then, you know, by showing Goku and Vegeta defeat him, by specifically not being that kind of thing, they show that that's essentially wrong, and that's the wrong way of going about strength. Kind of like an almost active critique over what makes Broly so popular to begin with. People like him because he's got big muscles and gives Goku a big fight and he's ridiculously strong, but at the end of the day, Goku is superior to Broly because Goku is not Broly. The only issue with this idea is, well, aside from it being kind of a very obvious message that I figured out just by looking at Broly's design, is that this is essentially what they did with Jiren. Jiren also emphasized pure strength and victory over essentially friendship, and was defeated by the bonds of the Universe 7 members, and basically learned that his ideals were sort of wrong, and sort of started to get connections with people. So if that's what they're going for in the Broly movie, it'd mean that we'd have two antagonists with the same fatal flaw and the same theme to the fight in a row, like chronologically. That did feel kind of repetitive. And considering they were working on the universe survival arc and planning the movie at the same time, I mean, I assume they know what they're doing. I assume they're going to make Broly seem different to Jiren. Like, I hope. But then again, this is the same franchise that thinks it's a good idea to keep reminding us that there are two functionally identical but visually different fusions of Goku and Vegeta. Who even knows at this point? Oh, right, right. I'm supposed to look on the bright side. I'm supposed to be positive about this. Well, for one thing, the art and the visuals look amazing. There is a lot of talent to this. And the fact that they're trying to sort of revamp the visuals of Dragon Ball is kind of one thing that I really was really excited to see pretty much ever since the Universe Survival arc started getting really good action. It's just such an odd movie to me, just sort of thinking about the speculation, because a lot of the kind of, the animation and the sort of discussion of the teams and like sort of the idea that they're trying to sort of like revamp a lot of stuff that didn't really work in the original, like that just seems really, really interesting. But then a lot of the story, which is like, Broly, that movie villain, Bardock, that guy where it seems like every time he comes back he gets less and less subtle and less compelling, and Gogeta for some reason. It just makes it seem like this is either going to be the best movie ever or the worst movie ever that looks like the best movie ever. And I'm hoping this movie is going to be good. At the very least, we know the action is going to be good. There's basically no way that we know the action's going to be bad. But everything else surrounding it, the actual story, that's the stuff I'm concerned about. And that's the stuff that I really hope does have something behind it.